Hello Internet, I'm Ethan the Human, and I'm gonna do a little tutorial on how to color separate sprites, specifically for MUGEN. First thing you gotta ask yourself, what is color separation and why do I want to do it? Well, color separation is basically what it says, separating colors of a sprite sheet. Not just one sprite, of all the sprites. And the reason we do that is so that palettes have a little bit more customization to them and have more parts that normally wouldn't be there. For example, you can change the palette of Yamcha here's arms as opposed to his hands. They can be different colors in a palette, when normally if it wasn't color separated, his skin, like every piece of him, that skin color now is always going to be the same. Color separation is really good if you want to get into the MUGEN process. You want to do stuff, you want to become a creator for MUGEN, but I don't know, you're not good at spriting and like the coding stuff confuses you. This is pretty good, and it always adds a level of polish to any character, really. Although color separation is pretty hard to do with really messy sprites like Mortal Kombat or something. So I suppose you should use cleaner sprites like Extreme Battle in here, or any Street Fighter game, or whatever you're doing. Okay, before we start, these are the tools you're going to be using. I am using GIMP right now, but I'm sure there's equivalents for Photoshop and Paint.net and whatever you use. But not Paint, not Microsoft Paint. There's going to be the Select by Color tool. What that does is it selects a color, and if you hold in Shift, it adds a color to the selection, and if you do hold in Control, it deselects a color, but keeps the rest. So if you want to select all the orange parts of Yamcha's gi here, boom, 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 hold in Shift, then all of them are selected. Next is, oh, by the way, you should put the threshold of that down to 0. If you put it any higher, if you select a color, it's going to select all the colors that are similar to it. And then when you use the pencil tool over them, it's going to come up with some pretty weird results, like miscolors and stuff. And you don't want that. You want it to be very pixel specific. Color separation is all about being specific. So threshold 0 is a must. You're going to be using the pencil tool, not the paintbrush tool, the pencil tool, because that uses hard edges and not transparent ones. You do not want to use transparent pixels with a lot of this. Well, semi-transparent pixels, I should say. Next you've got the eraser tool. That erases things, obviously. You're going to want to set the hard edge thing. It's by default it's not, and that uses transparency, and that's very not good for sprites. You're going to have to use hard edge because that deletes things pixel by pixel and nothing in between. You'll also be using the paint bucket tool. You want to set the threshold to that to 0. So boom, boom. It only changes if it's the exact color. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, you also need to know how to work with layers and whatnot. So the first thing to do in color separation is basically you need to remove the color separation on a layer. You're going to make a new layer with all of the shades. Here I believe there's 4 shades for pretty much everything. 4 shades for the hair, 4 shades for the gi, for the belt, the shoes, yada yada yada. I'm going to make those all the same color, and the reason I do this is so that things aren't too dark. Like when you do the hair, things are going to be really dark and it's going to be hard to tell the difference between them. So when you do this, everything's like uniformly very contrasted. So how I would go about doing this is select one shade and its equivalent in all of them. Like I'm going to do the brightest shade for every part here. So select the brightest shade of the hair, of the gi, of the belt, shoes already selected, and of the sock, and of the skin, and of the teeth, and of the mouth. You make a new layer, and you put a pretty bright color on there, like this. You can use any color here. Like let's do bright pink. Then use the paint bucket tool and fill all of that. So the lighter shade of every color is now bright pink. You can make that layer invisible for now. Then you go with the second color, so the second lighter shade of all of them. I'm holding in Shift, as you would notice, to select them all at once, basically. Actually, second lighter shade of that, second lighter shade of that, and that. Pretty much everything. Cool. Again, new layer, select a slightly darker shade of whatever color you're using, but make sure it contrasts enough, like that. Boom. So if you put that with the pink, you can see the difference very well. You can make those two invisible again, or you can keep them on. Might help you, might not. Now for the third shade for each of them, boom, boom, bam, kablow. That's about everything, right? Nope. Mouth. There we go. Okay, once more you make a new layer, a slightly darker color this time, but make sure it's not too dark and not too light. You're trying to make this as far away from completely white and completely black as possible while still being in a good contrast. You make a new layer, paint bucket tool. See, now you're starting to see how this is all going to play out. And then for the last one, select the fourth shade, boom, boom, boom. There you go. And the sock. And for one last time, you make an even darker color on a new layer, paint bucket tool. So now everything's just a lovely shade of pink. And you just merge those layers down so that all of these shades are on one layer. And you can add another layer that will be your background. Just a nicely contrasting layer. It's always good for like a layer for a color that's not going to be used and kind of in the middle between light and dark. So like that. Cool. So right now you've got three layers. You've got the original sprite sheet, which you can't really see right now, the background, and the shades. Now, here's the thing. You're gonna duplicate the shades layer, and you're gonna turn that to value under the layer type. What value does is you can change any color underneath it, but it's still gonna be the same brightness. So that's the thing. So I'll just put that values. And then another layer called colors. This is where you're gonna put your color. Like for example, if I put in some red in there with the pencil tool, boom. Still the contrast, just a different color. So I think you guys know where I'm gonna go with this. You're gonna select, for example, let's separate his gear. You select all the colors of his gear. I know where they are, but you can like turn all the other layers off to make sure you're selecting everything that's orange here. Now you'll notice that his shirt and his pants are both highlighted when you select that. We're going to change that. That's the point of color separation. So put all those other layers on so I see what I'm doing. And in the colors, I'm going to put one color, like reddish orange, for the pants. Just take the pencil tool, now that I've selected everything, and basically draw over all the parts that would be his pants. Boom. Make sure that there's no inconsistencies. There you go. Do the same for the next sprite. Next sprite. And the last one. See, now his pants are one color. Oop. It might be a little bit harder when you go down to characters like that are all one color basically. I'm doing Freezer for Team Z2 right now. That is not going well because all of him is white. And so you have to bring you basically have to go pixel by pixel and paint everything and make sure you're doing all of them, make sure that you're separating the right thing. So there we have it, as pants are one color. Now you can use the color select tool and just deselect what you just did. You deselect the pants basically. That's good for making sure, like if you zoom out, you'll see if anything by his pants area is highlighted. to see if you missed anything, and then also you can just for the next piece we're going to do his top, make that a different shade of orange, like a very yellow, and you could just basically very simply just brush over that because there's nothing else really selected. You can also use the paint bucket tool with another layer, but we're doing 4 sprites here and we want to make sure that we're very thorough, so we basically paint all of this over again for his shirt. See, here I missed something. That should have been orange. Another handy tool in the GIMP, when you've got your pencil tool, if you hold in control, it turns to the paint dropper tool. So you can put it over this color pants, boom, color something, then switch to the next color, and carry on. See, now his shirt and his pants are separated. So now if you make a palette, his shirt can be a different color for his pants. That's pretty much color separation. When you have a sprite sheet with like 300 or so sprites, it's going to become pretty boring. I suggest like watching YouTube or something in the background while you do it, but it's still pretty fun. So what you're going to do is you're going to do piece by piece, separating every part. So like now that we've done the orange parts, we're going to do the blue parts. So back into colors, gonna do one shade of blue for the wrists. Good thing this part is gonna be quick. See, now all his wrists are one color, and then for the belt, another one. So now his wristbands and his belt separated. I think you guys get the gist of what's going on. Gonna do that for all the parts basically, until all the parts are a different color. After all this is done, make sure all the parts are visible, and just merge all the visible layers. So it's all just one layer, then you can go and index it. Boom. All of your color separated stuff is in there in a row for you to organize into a palette. This only really works if you have all of your sprites in a sprite sheet, so I might do another video in the future to explain how to do that, and how to reorganize the color map so that it's easier to read for making palettes, and all of that stuff. This is basically just the basics of color separation. So thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video, I guess. Bye bye.